My father had a butcher shop, and he made what he called new kosher or kosher style sausage and shipped it to at least a dozen places all over Germany. During the 20s, I was much too young to have heard of Adolf Hitler. But when I came to be 13 years old, my bar mitzvah was July the 1st, but I remember distinctly on March the 1st, the Nazis had a boycott of all Jewish businesses. And I remember that on March the 1st, we had stormtroopers outside of the store. This was a corner building. A few times someone would knock on the office door on the back side, so to speak, and they'd knock on the door and they expressed their regrets as to why this boycott was taking place, and told my father they would still trade with him. And that was an encouraging sign. Of course, no one then could have predicted what was going to happen later on in the 1930s. In the early 30s, and there began a move toward enlisting Christian young Germans in the Hitler Youth. And once they became inculcated with Nazi propaganda, they had no hesitation to mistreat Jews.
Even kids, kids to kids.
Even kids, yes. And I remember distinctly that I might have been 14 or 15 years old. I was in high school, and some of my classmates would gang up on me in the schoolyard during recess and try to beat me up and kick and so forth.
Because you were Jewish?
Because I was Jewish, for no other reason. I was fair game, as were all other Jewish boys. There was nothing serious except the one night that we were on an outing, and we had this sort of a retreat, and we would stay there, we would sleep there, and we would eat there, and we would go out on trips. And one night they tried to pour castor oil down my throat. Unsuccessfully, I think I spit it out right at them, so they weren't very successful with that. Pranks, I think, but they were based on hatred, and which is easy to understand. That's all that they were reading and hearing, and that's all that they were being taught in the Hitler Youth. As much as I could understand about the developments, in 1937, the Nazis became very serious. There were limitations placed on educational opportunities for Jews, the owning of property, et cetera, so I could see that coming, and so could my parents. And during 1937, in February, I remember distinctly getting a letter from Fred Goldner Sr. from Nashville. And he was my mother's first cousin. And he asked my parents if they would send me to the United States, that I could live with them. And things had gotten to be pretty serious then, and I don't think my parents hesitated very long. My father was 60 years old when he came here, and my mother was 48. And they had a lot of difficulty learning English. But my father could read the papers and understand. He could not speak fluently, ever. I felt at age 18 and a half, I felt like an older brother to my father, because I could speak English by then. My brother had to learn, my father and mother had to learn. All that was on my mind then is to make a home for them and for us. And that's the way it was. I think the immediate impulse at the end of the war was to say, now we can go on with our normal lives. There were no longer food stamps or ration coupons, and there had not been any building to speak of like commercial buildings in downtown Nashville or new homes being built. But then in 45 and 46, things took off, and Nashville began to expand and to blossom, so to speak. And everyone, I think, wanted to become part of that. But I left in 1945 to go to Mississippi. And I spent 30 years there and got married and raised a family, 5 daughters. My sister found this man who went to high school with me, and she talked to him, and we started corresponding, and he and I are going to meet this September. I'm going to take my youngest daughter with me. The authorities in the city of Hanover, quite like many other municipalities, are inviting former residents or citizens, they like to call them citizens, to come back and in many instances to be the guest of the municipality for a certain period of time. And my sister took advantage of that. First time she went, she felt a little ill at ease. She went, for instance, to the cemetery where my father's parents were born, my grandparents, and that section of the cemetery was bombed out. I had a great aunt who was 84 years old, and in 1942 was going to be picked up by the Nazis, ostensibly to be taken to a concentration camp, and she committed suicide at age 84. I suppose that it only served to intensify my feelings of wanting to be as good a Jew as I was capable of being. We're thankful to be here. We're still Jews. Let us be the best kind of Jews that we can. My parents kept the Friday night Sabbath. I went to temple, and I enjoyed going to temple. I still do today.
You know, I'm just wondering what effect the experiences you had in that hometown and what you saw of Nazism, has it had any effect on the way you've raised your children?
Well, I would say that I'm lucky that most of them are very conscious of being Jews and practice Judaism in their own way. And I think that I've done what little I could to instill that feeling in them, and I hope that it'll carry over into the next generation. It's a good idea to practice something right here, and that is to support those who are, in one way or another, fighting anti-Semitism. We need to tap that reservoir. We need to encourage that sort of feeling. One good way would be to set a personal example, which is, you know, not always easy to do. But if one engages in participating in communal activities and in organizations that contribute to a better life in the United States and a better understanding about minorities, that's one thing all of us can do.